Candace Owens has just parted ways with the Daily Wire and is now pursuing other platforms. It is still a bit unclear what triggered this decision, but if we look at previous clips of her show, it's pretty obvious that her views don't align with Ben Shapiro's pro-Israel position.
I'm going to be honest with you because everybody's noticing it. Every single political commentator in America, every single one of them knows this, that if you do not step out and say things that are radically pro-Israel, or if you are too quiet on certain narratives and they want you to be radically pro-Israel, you can lose everything. That's truth. That is a fact. I'm not feeling like I need to hide from that anymore or be afraid to say it, rather, is a better way to say it, because I've endured this for years. I'm just at the end of my rope. I have given so much rope here, and I am just done with it.
Candace has always taken a very bold and fearless stance in any issue that she discusses. She never backs down, and has more recently shown a strong disdain for America's interventionist policies when it comes to supporting Ukraine or Israel financially.
You know, when you start telling the truth, you become a problem to the establishment, right? So if you're the military-industrial complex and you want people to just kind of sleepwalk into another war, and I'm sitting here telling you that, you know, Pentagon just can't keep finding the trillions of dollars that they send overseas. They've got this budget and they're sending all this money to Ukraine, and then they say, oh, we don't know where all the money went. It's being laundered and it's being sent back to a very small group of powerful people.
And I have to agree, why do we prioritize wars in other nations over the problems that we need to fix here in America? But if you're working for the Daily Wire and you start criticizing Jews or Israel in any way, shape, or form, you're walking on thin ice. We'll be discussing all of that and more coming up in this video. Jeremy Boring, the co-founder of the Daily Wire, announced on X that the Daily Wire and Candace Owens have ended their relationship. So it's not exactly clear if she was fired or quit, but it sounds like she was just too much of a loose cannon for Shapiro or Boring to handle. My feeling is that they didn't want her anymore, but one thing is for sure, Candace could not be more thrilled about it. She tweeted, "The rumors are true, I am finally free."
Hey guys, it's Candace. The rumors are true. I am free. Welcome to my locals page. So much to talk about. Obviously, I'm going to take a couple of weeks here just to rebuild and to refocus and to create something that is actually mine and something that can't be threatened or taken because it belongs to me. I can't tell you enough how much your support has meant to me over the years.
It's quite apparent that her departure is directly related to the backlash Candace has been getting over where she stands on the Israel-Palestine war. And this has created a lot of tension with Ben Shapiro, and he has criticized a lot of conservatives for their declining support for Israel and Ukraine, including Tucker Carlson.
And Tucker, by the way, then continued along these lines. He did an interview with Vivek Ramaswamy, and he likened what just happened in Israel, the kidnapping of women and their rape. I mean, he's showing video of this happening, like as he's talking about this. He compared that to drug overdose deaths in the United States. The only reason you're doing this is because you wish to downplay the atrocity that just happened in Israel.
And hey, look, it's perfectly natural for people to disagree, especially someone like Ben, an Orthodox Jew, who has always taken a very pro-war stance throughout his career, and someone like Candace, a devout Christian, but also someone who is very anti-war and anti-interventionist. But what I didn't expect was for them to clash publicly, given that they both work together. Back in November, just shortly after the attacks on Israel, Candace posted a Bible verse saying, "You cannot serve both God and money." Shapiro responded by telling her, "If you feel that taking money from the Daily Wire somehow comes between you and God, by all means, quit." Sounds pretty low and just unhinged for Shapiro to respond that way. He also called her behavior disgraceful.
Yes, the question was about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Without a doubt. I can't cause that. Yeah, I mean, she still works for my company. I think she's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find them disreputable.
Would you care to elaborate, Ben, on what exactly she said that was disgraceful? Just throwing around these ad hominems doesn't prove your point, and I really think that the best way to handle this, instead of just being childish and clashing on social media, is just have a respectful debate, the both of you, where you can just put your triggers aside and actually hash out these issues. It is certainly puzzling that this separation happened because Jeremy Boring has stated in the past that he does not have the power to fire Candace. Certainly not for anything that she chooses to say on her podcast. Boring tweeted this back in November when he took a leave of absence from the Daily Wire. In my current capacity, I cannot fire Candace Owens. That's something Ben and I have in common since he is also not an executive in the company and cannot hire or fire people. But even if we could, we would not fire Candace because of another thing we have in common, a desire not to regulate the speech of our hosts even when we disagree with them. Candace is paid to give her opinion, not mine or Ben's, unless those opinions run afoul of the law or she violates the terms of her contract in some way. Her job is secure and she is welcome at Daily Wire. So Jeremy, you're claiming that you support free speech, but your actions say otherwise. If you're going to make a public statement about the separation, then why not just be clear about what that separation means? Was she fired or did she quit? Because being ambiguous about it is just going to make people assume that you fired her. I highly doubt that she chose to leave, and I can tell what the last straw was. Candace has made some pretty tough comments on people in the Jewish community, most recently criticizing Rabbi Shmuley, also known as Michael Jackson's rabbi, who co-owns a kosher sex toy business, and she even went as far to call his daughter a hag and a witch. Following this, she had a debate on her podcast with Rabbi Michael Barkley, who called her an anti-Semite for her comments.
You don't know what a rabbi does. You don't know our theology. How dare you call him an unholy rabbi? How dare you go into the misogynistic, the anti-Semitic trope of his hag daughter, something used throughout the late 18th and early through the early 20th century.
Sorry. Hag is now anti-Semitic?
So that is a term of his hag daughter that goes back into the witches of Eastern Europe. Why did you have to call her a hag daughter?
Just to be clear, because she's a witch. I think she's a witch. That's not because she's Jewish. I would call someone a hag of any color. I think she's a witch. What they have done over the last 2 years. I believe his daughter is a hag. I said that because that's what I believe. You may disagree with me on that, but to say that that's anti-Semitic is ridiculous. I would call any person a hag.
Candace, I'm going to be very clear without trying to be insulting. So please forgive me if it comes off wrong. Okay, it's not meant to.
No, it's fine. You can insult me.
I don't want to.
I've dealt with 2 years of a rabbi insulting me, so I'm totally cool with this. Yeah.
I have no desire to insult anybody. Do you understand? Are you familiar with the history of the Grimm fairy tales and the folk tales of Eastern Europe?
I know that we can go back and we can also say
no. I'm asking a specific question.
Okay.
That the witch archetype of those fairy tales were specifically modeled and called the Jews. That the Jews of that part of the world were called hags and witches specifically because they didn't eat the same food. They had different practices, and they were excluded that way as part of the bloodline.
So you are saying that we can
by calling a rabbi's daughter a witch, a hag daughter, you have tapped into an anti-Semitic trope that goes back hundreds of years, whether you mean to or not.
Now look, I don't consider her to be anti-Semitic by any means. I think it's brave of her to be weighing in on some of the questionable behavior that Jews exhibit. She should be able to ask questions, and I agree it can be a little perplexing when Jews get very overly sensitive about these topics. But I don't think anybody deserves to be name-called. I don't agree with just throwing around the term anti-Semitism like it's nothing. And I also don't agree with Candace calling this man's daughter a hag. None of it accomplishes anything. As I'm scrolling through Twitter and reading the supportive comments for Candace, a lot of these users have opinions against the powerful influence that Jews have. And I was really struggling to figure out where I stand with all of this, but instead of taking one side or the other, I want to take the more centrist approach because there's always problems on both sides. I will just say, as someone who is Jewish, I support Israel's right to defend itself as a nation. I think all of these accusations of genocide are blown out of proportion, and I think that there's a lot of misinformation fueling these pro-Hamas movements around the world. Would I like to see a ceasefire? Sure. There's nothing more I want than to see people stop dying. But considering the fact that Hamas started this war and hasn't surrendered to a nation that they really don't stand a chance against, Israel does have to protect itself. And casualties of war are just unavoidable. The difference with Hamas is that they are intentionally killing civilians, women and children, holding them hostage, whereas when Israel attacks, they are actually going after terrorists that are hiding behind their own civilians. So unavoidably, Palestinian women and children will die because of the dangerous situations that these Hamas terrorists are putting them in. That's the difference, and casualties of war on either side does not equate to genocide. Chanting things like "from the river to the sea," however, that is calling for the genocide of Jews. On the other hand, I don't trust the Israeli government in how they're handling this war, nor any government for that matter. I think Netanyahu is corrupt, and I always found the unwavering support that America gives to Israel and groups like the Anti-Defamation League just labeling anybody that doesn't go along with those policies as an anti-Semite to be a little sus. Being America first over Israel first does not make you an anti-Semite. The problem is not where people stand on these issues, it's the idea that people's opinions are getting silenced. Having free speech and open debate about these topics is the most important thing. I think it's important for Candace and other people that share her concerns to be asking questions and learning from Jews about why certain things might not make sense to them. And like I said, this is why Candace and Ben should have a debate together. It's very disappointing that they never did, especially since conservatives are the ones who are supposed to be cheerleaders for debate. And I will just say this, again, coming from the perspective of a Jewish person. I think the reason why Candace has struggled here and received so much backlash, it's not that she's wrong about the things that she says or has bad intentions. It's just the way that she's trying to intellectually grasp these ideas really just comes from ignorance. I don't think it comes from hatred of any particular group.
So when I'm walking through Jerusalem and you see, and they say these are the Muslim quarters, this is where the Muslims are allowed to live, that doesn't feel like a bastion of freedom to me. So I guess.
Oh, I don't think it's where they're allowed to live in Jerusalem. I think it's that there's an Armenian quarter. It's not saying the Armenians can only live here. It's that there are communities, just like there's a Jewish community in Jersey here, and there's a Muslim community in here. I don't think, to my understanding, it's not restrictions within Israel proper of where Israeli.
I think it is where they have. I mean, at least that's what the rabbi who was taking me around. He said these are the Muslim quarters, so this is where the Muslims
live, but he didn't say anything about legally saying they cannot live in other places within Israel proper.
And when I say ignorance, I don't mean that as an attack on Candace. I just don't think she fully understands the history that Jews have gone through, which has made them who they are today. This goes back centuries of ancestral trauma, being persecuted in biblical times, the Holocaust. These are things that have affected the collective psyche of Jews and why they get sensitive anytime they face criticism. It's the same reason why blacks can be sensitive because of slavery. And it is a pretty consistent pattern throughout history that Jews are very successful. That is largely due to the oppression that motivated them to pursue career paths requiring hard work and intelligence.
Why are Jews disproportionately rich and successful? The rabbis, the scholars, the very capable and talented people are encouraged to have large families. So you might say, it's simply a good gene pool. If you encourage the brightest, the smartest, and the most capable to have the large families, you're perpetuating the healthy genes. And nobody encourages marriage more than Judaism. That urgency of mission drives us, sometimes subconsciously, to overachieve because we have this sense of responsibility, and sometimes we're not educated enough to know exactly what the responsibility is, so we try harder at everything.
When you're told for generations that you can't own land to farm, you focus on your education to make a living. When people just randomly show up at your house to kill you and your family and you have to flee the country, you are grateful to have the most portable asset, an education. When you're excluded from most trades and you are actively encouraged to pursue money lending, you learn the value of having a high degree of mathematical competency and logic. This is why they are so good in banking. So when we hear all this stuff about them running the world, well, there is historical precedent for a disproportionate number of Jews in positions of power. Most of them have earned that success and have a drive to go above and beyond. A lot of their ancestral trauma is why they can be very sensitive when it comes to criticism or being questioned. Not everybody sees this, and Candace is no exception to people who don't fully understand Jews. But just because we don't fully understand something, slapping a convenient label like anti-Semitism or racism doesn't help anybody learn anything. It just creates division, and when Ben Shapiro is out there acting unhinged about the lack of support for Israel, he is promoting cancel culture just like the left does. It's not a good look for him and just alienates other conservative voices that could really just be great allies. It's probably best that Candace is no longer chained to the restrictions that the Daily Wire had on her, so that she has more freedom to express herself, and with time, she'll probably get a better understanding of her views. Good luck, Candace. Can't wait to see your next move. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching Inverted World.